So Professor Puleng LenkaBula has been inaugurated as Vice-Chancellor of the University of South Africa. She is the first woman to hold that post in over 140 years. LenkaBula has been in the tertiary sector for years and is likely to face serious challenges, including the fees crisis in the higher education sector and tackling the slow pace of transformation. Professor LenkaBula joins us now to talk more about the road ahead. Prof, good afternoon. Thank you so much for being on Newsfeed PM today. You have been back at UNISA because this is your second time, I understand, back there for months now. How has your perception of the institution and the role evolved, if at all, in these past few months?
Mr. Mkhototo, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm elated to have the opportunity to engage you. The University of South Africa is faced with numerous opportunities to expanding the frontiers of access to higher education system, but also success. A lot of times universities open the doors, but students fall through the cracks. And this is one area that I want to prioritize, especially for students who are dependent on support from the state or the national financial aid system. Yes, I've found some opportunities, but also some challenges. The challenges that I found was a high attrition rate of 30 to 40% of students who either drop out and drop off, and also a high failure rate of 21%. And therefore, in my tenure, I'm hoping we can co-construct University of South Africa as a site of excellence. I've also brought through the idea of looking at catalytic research areas that are entwined with South Africa's and the NDP aspirations, but also entwined with Agenda 2063 and the global SDGs. One of the areas that I've thought we in universities have not paid attention to is the idea that students, when our students graduate, they should be able to create employment or to be employed or to have innovative systems that can contribute to the socio-economic transformation. And through the 10 catalytic niche areas of energy, aeronautical studies, marine studies, and oceanography, issues of optimizing the investment by the state on the square kilometer array so that we are not dependent on Euro-America's knowledge system. And I think it's quite important that we also bring a new matters that have not been prioritized at UNISA and use them to catapult in the position of UNISA.
If we could stay with the issue of the fees crisis for a moment longer, Prof, because when you were speaking at your inauguration, this was on Thursday, one of the things you said is that about 50% of students in the system are on some kind of financial aid, and that does not sound sustainable. How quickly do you think you'll be able to address it?
Yes, I think by 2022, we will ensure that in our engagement with philanthropists, but also in sharing our research commercialization, we should be investing back in ensuring that at least some of our students who are performing well but might have hindrances on the financial systems are assisted. But this would be a more immediate short-term decision that we make. What we want to do is to ensure that we create a certain percentage in our fundraising system so that we can partner with different entities in ensuring that we support our students. Those who are pursuing postgraduate studies, because this is an area that the National Development Plan identifies as an area of need, not of want. We will ensure that we meet the students halfway in supporting them in their scholarly pursuit or endeavor. So we are looking at scenarios of ensuring sustainability, financial optimization, but also ensuring that students don't fall through the cracks just because they don't have the fees to register or at least to study at the university, especially those that are doing more than 10 modules or 5 modules at a time.
It's quite a lot to juggle when you consider the immediate academic imperatives for someone in the role of Vice Chancellor. You also have a strong focus on social justice. You also want to tackle gender-based violence within the student community. How do you go about doing that, given that even before the pandemic, resources, especially financial, were already so limited?
Yes, one of the things that universities and businesses in South Africa have not looked into is the fact that they relate to universities, especially business. Corporate sector relates to business, to universities from the point of view of corporate social responsibility. And they don't optimize the research value and commercialization potential that is within university research aspect. In the current context, at the University of South Africa, we have research where diagnostics on COVID-19, but also on the improvement of wellness and well-being is ongoing with MinTech. How do we look at commercialization of such instead of depending on donation from 5 large pharmaceutical companies? How do we ensure that our country starts spawning commercial and as well as pharmaceuticals that can serve the needs of South Africa and the continent and ensure that we don't go with a begging bowl? To do so, we must ensure that our research is translated into patents or intellectual property rights that can be commercialized and reinvest in improving the educational system. I've been aware that when people talk about our contribution, they've only focused on the social justice agenda, is but one of the key criteria that I understand to being imperatives. The research agenda, the commercialization agenda, the improvement of engaged scholarship such that university research and what we teach is relevant for communities, for political and economic transformations are quite important. The questions of climatic changes, ecological degradation are already challenging global questions, but also questions for South Africa. If universities are not in the forefront of solving those, then the investment that society makes to university becomes irrelevant. We must publish, we must be competitive, we must represent science diplomacy for South Africa in the world. But ultimately, it's in the global impact and in the transformative impulse, not just of the faces within the university, but of the agenda that we drive as universities towards ensuring dignity, economic flourishing, and economic development of our society, as well as ensuring that South Africa does not lose its place in the sun, in the global politics and arena, that it becomes a leader in multilateralism, that we don't have to be hidden or our voices as universities, but also as South Africa is not hidden. So we are going to excavate talent. We're going to propel it. We're going to showcase the potential of South Africa in shaping the future, in shaping the world, not just the politics, but also the economics and economic transformation. And we have examples of how that can be done. Already at UNISA, we have strong support for small companies. We create opportunities for them to learning how to run their businesses, but we partner with scholars who ensure that they study the value propositions and the contributions to the economic systems. To do so is to ensure that we don't just have people who get the knowledge but do not invest it for the betterment of others.
You mentioned transformation, Prof, and you've listed the corporate support that you are receiving. Are you supported internally? And I asked that question because a few months ago, there was reporting about a group of academics who'd written a letter to the Higher Education Minister, Bladen Zamande, saying that you were being bullied and frustrated because you were trying to bring about these changes.
Sometimes, as a leader, you'd know, Temeki, that there would be communities, epistemic communities, that support the agenda to transform, to improve the university. But there are also those who may not have been comfortable with the idea of a woman, a feminist ethicist, who's competent, who has a PhD, who has published, who has supervised postgraduate students, leading them, because the domain of vice chancellors has often been of male leaders. And sometimes this is just because of cultural expectations or contradictions. I do not waste my energy on those who are not interested in co-constructing a successful UNISA with me, understanding my leadership principles and values which we would like to project for UNISA. And therefore you'd see that some have gone to the public or to the media, undermining the credibility of the work that I've done at the University of South Africa, at Wits University, at University of the Free State, where we were honored by your own talent, as well as the University of Toronto, where I've also played a visiting professor role and where I'm currently still related to because of the work that I do. So I'm not at that point where I have to assert who I am. What I want to do is to bring to the table those who have the vision of supporting the agenda for ensuring that UNISA provides the best education, higher education opportunities, that the alumni of the University of South Africa are proud of the changes and the developments that UNISA will make under my leadership. But also to understand this is a partnership between me, management, students, stakeholders, and the public, because this is the university that caters for 35% of the university system in South Africa. It cannot fail, it should not fail, and in my leadership, I'm going to ensure that we collectively work together to make it a success that it should be for the next 150 years, so that its history or histories are not cannibalized or buried, but instead it shapes futures with our society, and it represents the best that South Africa can offer to the global knowledge arena, including to the inventions, innovations that change the world for the better.
And Prof, in the main, finally and very briefly, do you think you are succeeding in bringing everyone on board on campus behind this vision that you've set?
I'm of the view that this is an incremental, it's a journey. It requires inviting people to understanding the journey. And so far, in the 8 months that I've been at UNISA, there's been tremendous support where some colleges have already started initiating the work in the catalytic niche areas. Just tomorrow, I'll be going to one of our campuses outside South Africa. I'll be looking at the opportunities in the aeronautical spaces. One of the most profitable airline, I will not mention it, that has survived the aftermath of COVID-19 is willing to partner with us in looking for prospects of training opportunities for those who would like to pursue the aeronautical, aviation, and associated environments. And that's quite important because employability, exposure, internationalization, and producing the best graduates that are relevant for the fourth industrial revolution changes, for the post-COVID aftermath, but also for thinking of Africa that contributes constructively to the world. And that's what I'd like UNISA to be. We don't want to mimic Cambridge. We don't want to mimic Harvard. We don't want to mimic Singapore University. We want to be that university that demonstrates what Africa's intellectual systems, civilizations, knowledge systems, ideas, and best talented people like yourself represent. And that's where UNISA, whether those who do not want to follow or support such UNISA, then they're welcome to release themselves from such an agenda. But those who want to ensure that UNISA succeeds are welcome, and we'll work with them in order that we become a strong university that we've always been, but even better. Thank you.
Professor Puleng LenkaBula, ever diplomatic. I'll take the compliments and park it there. Thank you so much for being with us on Newsfeed PM. The Prof is the newly inaugurated Vice-Chancellor of the University of South Africa, that is UNISA. Still ahead for you this hour, a wrap of the day's other top stories.